the doorbell is ringing. Be like, oh, look how glorious my eyeshadow looks. You can't have it. Rude. I would never do such a thing to you. I'm here. Hello. Hello. I'm here. Hi, camera. Here I am. There you are. Nice to see you. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day so far, and welcome to today's video where I'm going to be ranking my Natasha Denona palettes. So without further ado, let's get started. So I did not realize, I just looked at my previous Natasha Denona ranking to see how long it had been, and it has been 2 years. I can't believe that's correct, but apparently it is. It's been 2 years, over 2 years since I last did Natasha Denona. I redid my Pat McGrath ranking last year, about 9 months ago, but I have not revisited my Natasha Denona ranking, which is an outrage because I've got so many more palettes now. I have 19 palettes, which is so flipping annoying. I can't tell you. I can only assume I'm going to have to purchase a 20th because I can't live with this number. This is just utterly devastating and soul destroying to have 19 be the number. So it is absolutely time to revisit this because obviously 2 years, over 2 years, it's a really long time. One, I've picked up a lot more palettes since I last did this, but also the ones that I have had a long time, you know, they're really tried and true and tested, and I know exactly how I feel about them. I know way more about, you know, my preference and my tastes when it comes to eyeshadow and how much I actually use these color stories in reality. So I think this is going to be way more comprehensive and helpful than the previous one, which was so long ago. But I also feel like there hasn't been a new release as far as eyeshadow palette for a while that I've picked up. It's been a few months. Like the newest palette here that I actually like is, you know, I've had for a good few months. So nothing is really fresh and new, because I also feel like if you do a ranking video when eyeshadow palettes are really new, you always kind of put the newest ones right at the top because they're just the most shiny new toy, you know, they're the most exciting, the one that you're probably using the most right now because it's brand new, but it's not necessarily your favorite. That's what I've realized looking back at previous rankings and how much I've moved things around, is that once the initial excitement of a shiny new toy wears off, actually it might not be as big of a favorite as you thought when you initially got it. So these are all have been in my collection for a good few months now. So I feel like these are some pretty solid rankings, positions and thoughts. So without further ado, let's kick off with number 19, 19th place, my least favorite. It's the Love Face Palette. And yes, if I had failed to mention, I am going to be including these face palettes as well as the minis that I own and the 5 pans in this video. I'm just going to include everything because this is essentially a 5 pan eyeshadow palette with a couple of other products, so I thought I would include it. If you watched my review of this and my January favorites, you know I'm not a big fan. I feel like the formulas in here are like, this shade was really disappointing. I don't like that there's only one shimmer. The color story is just not for me, and we'll leave the face products out of it because this is an eyeshadow video after all. But there's just nothing that I love about the Love Face palette, and it being, you know, a more expensive product, a larger palette, that's why it kind of ranks right at the bottom. I just honestly can't see myself ever using this again, which is quite sad, but it's the honest truth. It's my honest feelings. So in 18th place, strangely enough, it's Mini Love. Mini Love. Apparently I've got something against the Love eyeshadow palettes from this brand. I don't know what it is. I guess I do know what it is. These very pinky tones are just obviously not my shades. I always used to say I am, like, when it comes to eyeshadow, I am a pink person, but it's like a specific type of pink. It's more so like dusty roses and mauves than the sort of pinks that are in the Love Face palette and the pinks that are in here. I find this one is just a little muddled. You know, the mattes are kind of a bit more like purpley, and then the shimmers are a bit more pinky, and this shade down here is just very pink and not like my taste at all. It's just one I never reach for. Again, I wouldn't expect me to use this one again after I kind of had reviewed it and like put it in a drawer. It's just not my colour story. The formulas are fine, and I quite like the fact there's 3 shimmers and 2 mattes, and we've got a more sort of duochrome-y shimmer in here. So I do like that. I can appreciate if this is more your colour story, you might really, really love it. Quick pun for the mums. But it's just one that isn't really for me and will never get much use in my collection. In 17th place, one I haven't even looked at for quite some time. So I was opening it when I was working out the order of everything. And again, it always hits me when I look at this palette, what a shame it was that the formula just wasn't there. Because this is Zendo in 17th place. Probably, like looking at it, what should have been like my number one, because this colour story is just, I love the colour story in here so much. You know, there's nothing in here I wouldn't use. The peachy tones, these greens, the blue, there's just so much like good going on here as far as the colour story. But the formula just wasn't there. It's all very soft and underwhelming, and therefore it just kind of falls by the wayside. When you're looking for something to, you know, really be beautiful on the eye, you just can't quite get there with this one, and it's just really disappointing because I love the colour story, and Natasha Denona is such a genius when it comes to colour stories, but the formula let this one down. So yeah, it's such a shame because it was really close to like genius, but we needed more. We needed more intensity. We needed more variation across the formulas. We needed some like impactful shimmers, and we didn't get them. It gave us nothing. I wish it had been different. In 16th place, a little 5 pan that I do actually like. I do like the colour story, but it just is very like meh. It just is, it's mini glam, okay? It's mini glam. I would travel with this. I'll throw this in my, you know, travel like makeup bag. What is that called? I'll throw this in my makeup bag if I'm going away for a weekend, because it's a perfect kind of work appropriate 5 pan that's going to be very soft and subtle on the eye, but it isn't exciting, is it? It's not exciting. It's not wow factor. Even this neutral color story, we've got like numerous palettes coming up that do it better, that do it with more wow factor. Everything in here is just very soft, and this shadow is just like far too light to do anything for me. Like this just doesn't show up on me at all, this matte. It's literally like the color of my skin tone, so it's useless, and then I only have one matte to work with. So just all in all, it just doesn't like wow me. It doesn't give me impact. It just doesn't stand out amongst these palettes. I can't put it any higher, although it's okay. It's just like, meh, it's underwhelming. In 15th place, one that will probably surprise you that I even purchased it in the first place, but it is Circo Loco. Obviously not my usual cup of tea when it comes to eyeshadow or anything. It's so colourful and it's so loud and crazy and bonkers, but I bought this because 1, I wanted to review it, 2, it was something I have nothing like this in my collection. I wanted to play with it and experiment and just have fun with makeup, which is what makeup should be about after all. And I really did enjoy and love playing with this, and there are some stunning shades in here. I actually find using the gold sort of orange shades in summer when I'm more tanned is such a beautiful effect on the eye, and just some of the shimmers in here are utterly stunning. They are absolutely glorious. The formula of the shimmers in here are so beautiful. The shine, the reflection, the amount of payoff and pigmentation and impact in this palette is stunning. If this was like my type of colors, this would be right up the top because the formulas are incredible, but it's obviously not one that I use very often because the color story is very intimidating for me and just not my cup of tea. But I so appreciate the fun and the creativity and the formulas. The formulas are incredible. In 14th place, the opposite of a love affair with Love Continues. Here we have the Midi Love palette. Now there are definitely some like colours in here that I don't mind and that I quite enjoy using, like some of the more neutral shades. This Blind shade is so beautiful and impactful. So there's definitely a nice formula across the board. Again, Transparent is a beautiful peachy shimmer that I really like and would happily use a lot, but as an overall palette and an overall colour story, I just don't reach for this one because it is obviously extremely pink, and really that's all you're getting out of here. You know, if I want a transparent type of shimmer or the Blind type of shimmer, there are other palettes that have those shades that I like the rest of the palette more for. This within this palette, there's like a couple of shades that I would pull out and happily use, but the overall colour story just doesn't inspire me to use it. It's just not my colours. The formulas are very nice. There are a couple of trickier like matte shades in here. Overall, the shimmers give me a lot of payoff, a lot of impact, a lot of shine, and the mattes are really easy to work with. I think, again, this is just a case of it's okay, but it's just not for me. I think the lesson here is that I should stop buying Natasha Denona products with the word love on, because apparently they aren't for me in general. Now in 13th place, unlucky for some, it's Mini Biba. Now I had high hopes for this because I'm a big fan of Biba. You're about to find out, a very big fan of Big Biba. But Mini Biba, I just felt like it's so warm, so warm. I'm not a fan of the fact that we've basically got 4 mattes and 1 shimmer. I would have liked at least another 1 shimmer out of the 5, and I feel like this had a lot of potential, but again, it's just so warm on me. I wish it was a little more neutral, and I wish we had another lighter shimmer or more interesting shimmer and impactful shimmer. This one is beautiful, but it needs a friend. It's so like reflective and stunning. I want another one, and I wish it wasn't overall so warm, because otherwise it would have been really, really high up. It could have even been my number 1 £5, but alas, it just slightly falls short because it looks so warm on me and I prefer a more neutral, overall soft glam type of look. But yeah, a really nice formula. Again, one very easy to travel with and whack in your makeup bag. But yeah, I just slightly unbalanced for me. Not like unhinged, but you know, the number of mattes to shimmer, I mean. In 12th place, we have another little £5 and another one that I actually got a lot of use out of, and it is Mini Gold. I think this is a gorgeous little £5, a colour story that works beautifully. I love the number of shimmers. We've got a more intense one and a slightly less intense. The mattes work perfectly together. The overall look that you get with this £5 is perfect. You're not missing anything. You don't need like a lighter shade or a deeper shade. You don't need an extra shimmer. This is a cohesive £5. At last, we've got everything we need in one little £5. Perfect. It's not one I use a lot. Obviously, it's a £5, so it's less exciting than the midis for the most part, but yeah, it is a very nice £5 with a really solid formulation and a really nice colour story. I think if this shimmer hadn't been so gold, if this had been more green, this would probably have been like my favourite ever £5. Could have even been way higher than a lot of these midis, but because it runs actually really gold, that's what slightly lets it down for me. Obviously it's the Mini Gold, so you know, what was I going to expect? But the rest of the palette leans itself very khaki and green, so I would just wish there had been a more green shimmer in here, and the sky would have been the limit. But yeah, for that reason I don't use it a lot, and I feel like if I do use this colour story, there are other palettes that do it better because they've got a nice shiny army green in there, you know. In 11th place, we're back to the middies sizes, my favourite side of palette, and it is the bronze palette. This used to be like right up my street, this colour story, but recently I definitely lean more towards neutral and cooler tones with my eyeshadow. So this one just is a little too warm. I think it's got a gorgeous array of shades, but there are a lot that are very close to each other. You know, most of the mattes in here have like a sister or a brother. Like these two are almost identical. So are these two. So are these two. Like there's a lot of repeated shades, shimmers as well. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are almost exactly the same. And so although this is a nice palette with nice formula, and if you like warm tones, like all your dreams have just come true, but there needed to be like way more differentiation between the colours, because there are so many repeats in here that's why it kind of goes down the ranking. If we'd had like a few more like cooler or neutral mattes and shimmers mixed up in there, and there was more difference between the shades that we do have, it could have been, again, really close to genius and perfection, but just again with those repetitive shades that are too close. And now we're into the top 10, my only larger Natasha palette, and it is Metropolis. This is another one that in its time, when I first bought this was like my favourite eyeshadow palette, not just from Natasha Denona, but in general. I've got a lot of use out of this bad boy, and I think it shows. I absolutely lived for it at the time, and it gave me a lot of fun and playing. But again, it's kind of limited as to like the colour story. You've got basically a load of warm tones, and then you've got a load of greeny golds. But I feel like when you first look at this, you think this has got all of your green and khaki and army dreams come true. But a lot of these are just not quite what I wanted. Like, I wish some of the shimmers were more green. Again, it's a very green, or half of it is a very green palette, but we don't really have an impactful green shimmer. We've got, you know, this, which is really a gold, and then we've got this one, which is more of a sort of satin. It's not a very impactful shimmer, and it's quite brown in reality. So again, I feel like we're missing the green shimmers from here, and to look at it you think it's perfect, but actually once you start using it on the eye and playing around with it, despite having this many shades for me and what I wanted from it, I'm missing the green shimmers out of such a sort of green palette. It definitely had its time in my collection when I used it a lot, but I really don't use it anymore. I don't like these really massive. I much rather the midi size is just perfect for me. These larger palettes are a bit intimidating and overwhelming. Just knowing where to start with the combinations and what to do, that I find myself rarely really using this, but I did get a lot of use out of it when I first purchased it, when I had a lot less palettes, a lot less competition for my attention, and now I feel like I just don't feel excited to use it anymore. In 9th place, we have another of the face palettes, one that I like a lot more than the Love face palette, and this is the Deep Glam palette. So with the Glam release, we had a light version and a deep version, and this is the deep version. This blush, I mean, so much nicer than the one that's in the Love face palette. Is really beautiful and a really nice, easy to use formula that I really enjoyed. The highlighter is also very, very nice. But you know, we're here to talk about the eyeshadows. So all of that aside, this is just a beautiful 5-pan palette. This really got me excited for Natasha Denona as a brand again, because these shimmers are just like next level, and that's what we want from Natasha Denona. We don't want Zendo, we don't want quieter. We want these wet, shiny, glorious shadows. That's what we want. Obviously this is the deeper palette. I was able to get this one early before we saw the light one, and I really loved it, but it is deep for me. So this is like, you know, if I'm going all in. So I don't really use this a lot day to day, because these shadows are quite intense, like the balance between the mattes and the shimmer. There's no sort of lighter shade for me with my skin tone, but it's a beautiful, beautiful palette with some stunning shadows in, and just the perfect ratio with the shimmers, with the mattes, with the intensity. A really great palette. I think probably just better suited to deeper skin tones than mine. And in 8th place, we have the last of the minis. So what must be my favourite mini, and it is Mini Retro. I don't know that I've understood this fully when I first got it. I just didn't really know how to use it. But what I found is this is one, a really comprehensive little 5-pan, and two, actually a really versatile 5-pan. When I fell in love with this first was I saw a look on Instagram, I can't remember who it was by, where all she did was use the matte khaki green, like all in the crease up towards the brow, like really diffused, and then the green shimmer on the lid, and it was stunning, just such a simple but effective look. And so that's how I started using this, and then just using the pinks as well on their own. I feel like when I first got this, I didn't know how to put the greens and the pinks together. I didn't know how that was going to work. I didn't see the vision. I didn't get it. And that's why I struggled to love it. But using them either separately as greens in a look or peachy pinks in a look, I actually really fell in love with it. And then I found how to use it for me all together as one, and I just really appreciate it. And that means that I have like 3 looks out of this little 5-pan, this little mini. The formulas in here are beautiful. The shimmers are that very shiny, reflective, wet look. I like the ratio and the range of shimmers that we have in here. You know, this one is more smooth and just understated luminosity, and then we've got some really impactful shimmers in there. I think just having that one green matte and the one peachy, given this is a 5-pan, really just makes it so pretty and versatile, and I really love this one. I think it's quite unique of a colour story for a 5-pan, and I think it's beautiful and very like eye-catching on the eye. You know, when you wear this, I feel like people know it's mini retro. Do you know what I mean? Quite a unique little number, as it turns out. Now, let me tell you, this top 7 has caused me sleepless nights. It's caused me stress. It's caused me angst. It's caused hysteria in this house, to be honest with you. I would say as of like this number 7, take the order very much with a pinch of salt. I found this agonizing to separate these and to put them in an order. And this is the order we've gone with today, but it's definitely a bit subject to change. It's definitely a bit pinch of salt, you know, because they're really hard to... We're splitting hairs, okay? That's what I'm saying, we're splitting hairs. But in 7th place, I feel like people are going to be very shocked because of how much I love this palette. But it is the My Dream Midi. For a hot minute, this was like my favourite palette from the brand. And I do still love it. Like I said, this could have been on like Catch Me in a Different Mood on a different day. This could have been like third or 4th, okay? But today it's 7th, and it's just because I really love and want to love a lot about this palette, but there are little things that just are slightly not quite coming together for me. The colour story altogether is quite dark with not very much sort of lighter day-to-day, daytime looks for what I prefer to do. That's to say there's no such thing as daytime and evening appropriate eyeshadows. When I say daytime or like whatever, daytime appropriate, I mean for me and what I like and my personal preference, not anything to do with anyone else or what you do. You absolutely do you. For me, I like something a bit lighter for the daytime, something not so dark, not so smoky. And this, it's quite hard to achieve that. You have to be very strategic and careful, and everything kind of pulls a bit darker on the eye than how it even looks in the pan. I feel like the shimmers just aren't quite the shades that I lean and gravitate towards. You know, they are more pinky and some more purple. I don't use this one at all because it is, you know, just not my cup of tea. It's basically an orange, very loud shimmer that I just can't really see myself using. Vision is gorgeous, but because it is that multi-chrome, again, it can pull one way or the other. On camera now, it's looking very pink. To me, it looks very, very dark green, and that can be confusing. And then, you know, Thrill, again, is a beautiful shadow, but it on the lid, again, it looks very yellow gold and not really my cup of tea as far as shades. So I love how it looks, but I always find that when I actually use it, the look never quite comes off in the way I want it to, because I think it looks a little misleading and it doesn't really go on the eye, how it looks in the pan, but a beautiful, quite different colour story actually in reality when you start really using and swatching these shadows. I think it's gorgeous. I think the formula is fantastic. I love the packaging. There's a lot of good in here, and don't get me wrong, I really enjoy using it and I do use it fairly often. But like I said, I feel like every time I use it, I'm like, oh, this isn't how I thought the look was going to turn out, because some of the shadows really do pull differently on the eye to how they look in the pan, and that can be a little frustrating / annoying. These next two palettes were almost impossible to choose between and to like put in an order and choose which I like the most, because they're so different yet kind of the same. So first up in 6th place, had to check the number, is the Midi Retro Glam palette. This is again one that is so flipping close to perfection. If there was like 2 shades different in here, this would be number 1. I've no doubt this could have been number 1 had we taken this out and put a really rich sort of foresty green in here. If we had had maybe a slightly more impactful green shimmer, I feel like a couple of little tweaks in here and it would have been my favorite palette probably of all time, because this is like the color story that I live for. But like most people have pointed out, there's no sort of richer green shade in here. We're really screaming out for it, and I don't know what this one's doing. What is it doing in there? I've no idea. But it's there, okay? It's there. It doesn't really seem to belong, but it's there, taking up a place where there should have been a really rich khaki type of green matte that we would have loved, and it would have just helped you pull together. I feel like I'm always, as everybody has said with this palette, you kind of, everything ends up a bit light and kind of missing some depth, missing some smokiness, missing some richness. You can't really get there with any of the shades in here. The only option is to use this one, and you know, that is quite a shimmery shadow. It's more of like a satin than a matte. So it's then really hard to know where to go. How do I get that rich depth? Because Oz down here really is, again, it's a bit lighter than it looks. And again, is a shimmer. Evergreen up here. Can we go there? That's as deep and rich as we get. And it's more of a medium level of depth. So I am obsessed with this color story. The formulas are all absolutely delightful. This little shade down here is stunning. It's so beautiful, and I absolutely love it as like a one and done shadow as well. So it does have quite a bit of versatility in this palette, but it's just literally one step away from perfection for me. In 6th place, another one that could have been higher, could have moved around a little bit, but I feel like I'm happy with 6th place for this one, and it is the Midi Retro palette. These, when I say I like pinks, these are the pinks that I like. This color story is just stunning, and this row here, the Nude Mauve, Apart and Andy, those are the like shades that really boost this one up a bit, because they're so smoky. They're smoky and they're interesting, and they're not just pink and mauve. They give me something a little bit more interesting and different and a bit more unique. We've got some beautiful, very impactful, pretty shimmers in here. These like smokier tones, I just absolutely live for those types of tones. Just gorgeous. And all of the formulas in this palette are perfect, like the best of the best mattes and shimmers. Every shade in here is stunning. I even love this shade that I thought I would never use because it's so like white. Is a great inner corner highlighter or brow arch highlight. It's got something for everybody, and I think some of the mattes are actually more neutral than they look, and I just really love using this palette. It's so beautiful and I just get a lot of joy out of it. I think these colours really suit me. They're very much in my comfort zone. It's that beautiful handy midi size, and it just gives me a lot of joy to use it. It makes my heart happy. It's very boring. It's very in my comfort zone, but it's what makes me feel the most beautiful, these colours. So yeah, absolutely love this one. Now in 4th place, A really annoying addition, but one I must include because it's one of my favourite palettes ever. But this is the 5 pan. So this is 5 pan number 3. It appears to be discontinued. I don't think we're ever going to see it again. But oh my goodness, this is the most perfect, stunning, smoky blue palette known to man, okay? Whenever I wear this, everybody is falling over themselves wanting to know what it is I've got on the eye. It's so unique, it's so perfect. This formulas are stunning. The range of shimmers and mattes and the ratio and everything is absolutely perfect in like the sweetest of spots. Obviously, it's a crime that this is discontinued. You can, in theory, get these shades. 4 of these shadows are in the green brown large palette, and then 1 of them is in the purple blue. So that's really annoying. So yes, in theory, you could get these shadows by buying 2 really expensive, ginormous eyeshadow palettes just to end up with these 5. So obviously that's quite annoying, but yes, in theory, the shades themselves are available, but not in a handy 5 pan, okay? You'd have to spend like £300 to get 5 eyeshadows. We need this one back is what I'm saying. It is absolutely perfect. You just heard me saying that I love a smoky eyeshadow, and it's this shimmer for me, okay? It's utterly insane, but the mattes are so smoky, but pardon you. How dare you, Natasha, how rude of you with that shade. Are you joking? It's just the most perfect blue colour story without it being like blue in a garish bright way. It's a smoky, sophisticated blue, smoking colour story. Smoking the pancake. You know, I live for it. It's so stunning on the eye. The smokiness of the blue undertone really brings out my eye colour, and I find it so flattering, and it's like doing colour but in a like safe space. It's just so unique and so special that for a 5 pan to be like ranked this high is a madness, I know, but it's like the 5 pan to end all 5 pans, and I am almost afraid to use it. Although these are really large shadows, I don't think I'm going to like hit pan anytime soon, but I hate that it's discontinued because I know so many of you would love to get your mitts on it, and it is just divine. It really is a very special little palette. I try really hard not to wear it on camera because I cannot fathom how annoying of me to do such a thing. Be like, oh, look how glorious my eyeshadow looks. You can't have it. Rude. I would never do such a thing to you. Oh, now the top 3, let me tell you, these are a madness trying to rank these because they're so different. When I reveal them, you will understand my pain. How am I supposed to compare these 3 when they are so different? I don't know if I can, but I've tried and we're going with it. In 3rd place, it's Biba. She could have been my number 1 on any given day. I would suppose this is probably my most used eyeshadow palette. But she is very muted, she's very natural, she's very neutral, which I don't know if you've noticed, that's my thing, my cup of tea. That is what tickles my pickle. But I do, in order for this to be higher, I feel like even for me, I would have liked it to just be a little more exciting. Because even the shimmers in here, although there's really only a couple of shimmers, they are more like subtle, understated shimmers. They aren't her most metallic, you know, they're very wet look and a lot of shine, but they aren't like popping. You know, if they had been really popping, then no one will ever catch her, is what I would say. But this is like the everyday go-to palette of dreams. It's perfect for like every single day of the week, every day of your life, for the office, for date night, for whatever occasion, bridal, that you want neutrals. There's a colour for every single day and person in the entire universe, I'm going to say. But yes, if there had been a bit more punch, a bit more shimmer, I wouldn't have needed to ever buy another eyeshadow palette again. Not saying I wouldn't, but I wouldn't have needed to, you know? She's just divine for doing no makeup or natural makeup or neutral glam that's a little softer because there's not a lot of punch to the shimmers in here. You just can't beat it. The variety, the formula, the softest, most blendable mattes. She's where it's at. She cannot be defeated. An absolutely glorious staple. A staple, I tell ye. Now these top two are my children, my babies. I wanted to put this palette in first place, but I felt like that was illegal. I don't know who made that law, but I felt like in my soul, in my core, it was illegal to put this palette first because it's not even an eyeshadow palette. It's the Glam face palette in the light shade, okay? But we're ignoring, in fact, put the lid back on. We're ignoring this. This is about eyeshadow today. Let me tell you, these 5 shadows are so beautiful that I'm actually offended. I'm offended, I'm insulted by how perfect they are. It's the gradient of the mattes and the impact of the shimmers. They are my favorite lid shades, like, of life. I use this so much. There are whopping dents in both of these shimmers. I absolutely love them. I love this. This is a 5, if this was just a 5 pan, this does like the neutral 5 pan so much better than like the mini Glam or the mini Biba. This should be a 5 pan because, you know, the highlighter in here, not really my cup of tea. The blush, it's a cream blush, it's fine. But this is like the greatest 5 pan of eyeshadow. For me, like a neutral lover, for every day, it's absolutely perfect. If I ever want to go like full foxy neutral Glam, this is what I use. It's just perfect. In the same way that like Biba absolutely hits the nail on the head for like what it is and what it's trying to be. This 5 pan for like a Glam, a soft Glam, neutral 5 pan of eyeshadows, it doesn't get any better than this. It's just perfect. These shimmers are utterly stunning. They're just so reflective and impactful. The mattes are the perfect combination. You've got your perfect like lighter neutral transition shade. It's like a bit of some warmth in the crease. You've got a middle shade that I would use to give some depth for every day. And then if you want to amp up, you've got a perfect rich brown. It literally can't get any more perfect than this. This is the perfect 5 pan of eyeshadow palette. I absolutely love using this. Whenever I use this, I get so many compliments on my eyeshadow. I know so many of you absolutely adore this palette. Seems ridiculous for it to be second, but that's how perfect and how much I love it is, and that's how boring I am. So make of that what you will. Which means, if you've been paying attention, that in first place it is the Glam palette, the Glam midi palette. Oh, I mean, just looking at her, you know, I got all of my palettes out over the last couple of days and was just trying to put together my thoughts and put this order together. And when I opened this, I haven't used this for like a few weeks. I've just been, you know, there's been a lot of new eyeshadow palettes launching, so this one has been a bit neglected, and especially with Natasha Denona with her retro and the retro Glam coming out and her My Dream palette, this one has definitely been a bit neglected over the last few months. But what I found is once the kind of excitement over the shiny new toys died down, I found myself gravitating back to this one, and I feel like it's just the most me for every day. When I'm feeling a bit more exciting, I'll reach for, you know, the retro Glam palette or the 5 pan. When I'm feeling like a bit more, I want to be, you know, a sexy foxy kitten on a date night, I'll go for the Glam face palette. When I'm feeling like I want to be more romantic, I'll go for the retro palette. But ultimately, when I just want to feel like myself and when I don't want to think, I just want to put on eyeshadow that I know will suit me, that I know will work, this is the one that I go for. I think it's the most versatile and the most suited to how I do my makeup, the looks that I like, the tones that I like for like every occasion. I think ultimately if I could only keep one, this would be the one I would have to keep because it just gives me, you know, it gives me impactful shimmers and it gives me light and shade and it gives me daytime and it gives me nighttime looks, but it's all very neutral and cool, which I really love, and I really feel like it just suits me the most. And the formulas are fantastic. The range of mattes is wonderful, and I also feel like of all of the midis and actually most of her palettes, this one has the least sort of shades that are unnecessary or that are dupes of themselves or that are too close to something else. I think we've got a beautiful amount of variation in there, whether it's between the finishes or the shades themselves. And I just think this one is the one where I'm not wishing for anything. I'm not wishing the shimmers were more impactful. I'm not wishing this shade was in there, or we're missing this, or we're missing that, or I wish that shade wasn't in there, or I wish that shade was better. This is like everything comes together perfectly and nothing is lacking and nothing is missing. And it's just a very flattering colour story. I find like this really flatters me and it suits me of everything else. It's very easy to use, very easy to work with, very easy going. And when all was said and done, and the shiny, sparkly new dust had settled on the newer eyeshadow palettes, I found that I was using this one again more and more than I was the newer ones. So the love is deep and true in this one. And so there you have it. Those are all of my Natasha Denona 19, annoyingly, palettes ranked for your viewing pleasure. Now, like I said at the beginning, we have to take these things with a little pinch of salt because I cannot be trusted. I do tend to go back and forth, and you know, depending on the mood and the occasion, some of these orders would be different, but these are the order that I feel like is the closest to what we're going to get at the end of the day, as far as being like fixed in stone. I definitely go through phases, and I feel like over the last couple of years a lot has changed when it comes to my preferences for makeup. I've gone way more towards, you know, neutral, cooler tones rather than warm tones. I've definitely got more and more boring, and that's just who I am as a person. And I think that shows. But I would say this is the order that gives me the most joy, which is why it might be really surprising that this one's so high, given that it's like really a face and eye palette, and that why the 5 pan is so high. But I think ultimately those are palettes that give me so much more joy than like some of these midis that I enjoy to use, but they don't like excite me and get my blood pumping, you know? So please let me know what your thoughts are on my ranking. Do you completely disagree? One of your favorites right at the bottom, one of your least favorite palettes right at the top? Please let me know in the comment section your favorite ever Natasha Denona palette, and one that you hate just for fun. But I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, and I would love to see you in the next one. Otherwise, take care for now. Bye 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 bye.